If you want an early jump, you can turn your Bibles to John 15. That's where we're going to be today. Bye, Nancy. Let's pray. What's that? Oh, man. Challenge accepted. God, thank you so much for who you are. Thanks that all of us come from different positions and different platforms this week, and you're able to speak to the chaos. You're able to speak to those who are comfortable, those who are, they're in a sweet spot in life. Thanks that you're also able to speak to those who come from a very difficult spot. Maybe they've had a tremendous week, a week filled with pain, confusion. And also for those of us who come just because we're curious. We're wondering about this Jesus thing. We're wondering about this God thing. And Lord, through your Spirit, you're able to speak to everybody through a dumb hick from Missouri. And it's not even my words, Lord. I pray that your word would speak. I pray that you would speak life to me and to all of us today, that you would bring us to the place that we need to be so that we could be a better version of ourselves. So that we are more like you tomorrow than we are today. Lord, we give you ourselves, we give you our thoughts, we give you our hearts. We dedicate this time just that you would speak. We're drowning out all of the confusion and all of, we're unplugging from life, desperate to hear the voice. Lord, I pray that you would use the preparation that has been done, that there might be some clarity spoken. Lives might be changed, and we get to see you. I pray that we'd stay connected to the vine above all things. In Christ's name, amen. All right, so language has really changed over the last 5 to 6, 7, 8 years, and not only has language changed, but so has definition. Definitions have become very diluted. And let me give you just a quick examples of those, all right? So in the last 5 or 6 years, we have things like hashtag, where 20 years ago, if you were to have used that phrase, hashtag, people would have wondered what you had for breakfast. Some people love, or you've heard the word in our culture today with photobombing. Again, that's like a terrorist activity 20 years ago. People don't know what you had against, crafts and those little photo books that people do. Why are you destroying all that? That doesn't make sense. That would have been something very confusing 20 years ago. We have abbreviations that we use in our text language today, SRSLY. Anyone know what that means? Yeah, it's like, seriously? It's like someone from the South wrote that one. I know they did. They came up with that one. Seriously? And we have the one that is really confusing is GIFF. Anyone familiar with that? I just sent the first GIF to a GIF. Some people call it GIF. Some people call it GIF. Okay, what is it? No, you can look it up. It's GIF. Just kidding. It's interchangeable. It's weird because it's really kind of confusing. Not only is the word itself confusing, but then how to say it's confusing too. I just sent the first GIF or GIF to the leadership team at our retreat 3 weeks ago. We were talking about it, and I said, yeah, it's on your phone. You slide it over. You can find a video that communicates what you want to communicate. And they're like, what? So all these old men are like, wow, that's really weird. And I'm the old guy, too, with weird technology. What? Wait. I'm an old guy, too. Don't worry. I know. Another phrase is binge watching. How many of you have binge watched a series on Netflix lately, right? Okay, so I wouldn't dare to ask you which ones, because some of you would probably be embarrassed. But we binge watch now, in something that we never did before. We have the phrase FOMO. Anyone know what FOMO means? Fear of missing out. With technology, things are changing so quickly. We have news given to us almost on a rapid rate. And if you didn't know about what happened this morning at 8:13 in Washington, man, you're missing out. So we have FOMO. We also have BOGO. Anyone know what a BOGO is? Yeah, buy one, get one. We didn't use that term 20 years ago. At least I didn't. We also have the phrase co-parenting, which is brand new. It's kind of different. Co-parenting is when you have a child together with someone else, but you're not living together, you're not cohabitating together, and you're not married. But you're just co-parenting together, right? That's a phrase, co-parenting. In last year's dictionary, there were 50, and I say dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary is the one I was researching this week. There were 51 new words that had a self hyphen in front of them. First time that we've had that many self words. We also have the word, what? Selfie, right? Let me just share something with you. On the Oxford Dictionary, in 2000, I think it was 2013, the word selfie was the word of the year according to the Oxford Dictionary. 2014, the word of the year was 20 years ago, it was known as a noun, and the word for verb was a person, as a noun was, for friend, a person whom one knows and with whom one has a special bond of mutual affection, typically a family relationship. But then, recently, if you look this up, the word friend now has a new meaning. It's actually defined as a verb, and it's not just a noun any longer. And the verb version of friend is an informal use, and it basically means to add someone to a list of contacts associated with a social networking website. An example is, I am befriended or I am friended by 29 people whom I have not friended back yet. And you probably are in that list for me on Facebook. I don't do Facebook real well. I don't do it as well as many of you do. So I have a lot of contacts who have come in who have said, hey, can I be your friend? Sure, whatever. Every 6 months that I check it, I will accept your friend request. I asked Mandy the other day how many friends I had, and it was like 890. Stupid. I have no idea who all those people are. I do well to know 90 of them, about 10%. How many friends do you have on Facebook? How many social contacts do you have? How many people have requested to follow you? That's your long-lost aunt's neighbor's second cousin, 4 times removed. No, but so Joe, you're a Facebooker too. I love it. I love it. I was playing racquetball this week with a couple of guys here in the church, and as we were playing racquetball, I was up front and I was serving, and I threw a serve back to Andy Birch on the back left corner, and his front. What was your friend's name that played with us? Drew, that's right. And so Drew looks at Andy, and Andy looks at Drew, and Drew goes, "I'm unfriending you." I was like, what? What just happened? He missed the play. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So you can unfriend people. You can just check the box and uncheck the box. I can block you. I can delete you. I can push you away from my life. I can isolate myself from you. And that's how friendship has become diluted. Marcus Tullius Cicero, who is a guy who was right after the Ides of March assassination, he was very prominent in Rome, and he became kind of the leader for a short season. And he says this: friendship is the only thing in the world concerning the usefulness of which all mankind are agreed. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, that's a deep quote. If you just really think about the weight and gravity of what he's saying, the layman's term is this: friendship is the only value any of us really aspire for. So while the definition of friendship has changed over the years, the desire has not. All of us desire friendship. And yet last week, if you remember when we were discussing the second part of the series, Connected 3D, one of the things that we saw was that we are more lonely today than we've ever been in the history of the United States. And when you look at the generational studies, the greatest generation, those who are in their 90s, they are less lonely than we are today in the younger generations. Why is that? Why is it that this thing that we've used to try to stay connected has competed with its own cause, and it seems as if it's polarizing all of us? What is the deal? Is it that technology is bad? No, not at all. Technology just is. We discussed that in the first sermon. How technology is just a tool, much like Nimrod used a brick in Genesis, and it was new technology of the day. We and every generation behind us will have some technology that they're going to learn how to interface with as they progress in life. So technology by itself is not bad. Technology just is. It's amoral. It's neither good nor bad, but how you use it can be either constructive, it can help be used to build, or it can be destructive, and it can destroy everything that you learn to love. And last week, one of the things that we talked about was that through this technology, through the technological advances that you've been afforded, because we live in 2018, you have a theologic advantage. You have a theological advantage, and the reason for that is now you can leverage new technology in your discussions at home or with your friends or with your tribe to honor God and each other and not yourself. Because when you look at what this technology did in Nimrod's time, the reason they used the brick, or one of the destructive ways in which they used the brick, was to elevate themselves and not God. And so that's really the difficulty with technology. And so last week we gave you very simple, very practical tools, and I hope that you guys have opened the envelopes. I beg that you've opened the envelopes. It was so much fun for my family and I last week to be able to just do that right after church and go through the entire kit, read the letters, read the documents, put the things on the wall and on the board, commit to trying to eat together as a home. And I'll tell you, we only got one sticker on our calendar this week. That's all we got. But it's not about trying to get 5 a week. It's about just trying to have some faithfulness in this conversation. Even just customize this stuff. And so last week, one of the things we talked about was disconnecting to connect. One of the things we got to do is understand that who and what we've said yes to will help us understand who and what we've said no to. So the very first principle for all of us is that we have to learn how to disconnect from the things and distractions of this world so that we might connect deeper with not only our Creator, but our community. The second value that we learned was that we're called to deepen internal values, that the filters and the practices that we use with our technology is critical to our future development, because the best cell phone coverage in the world will not guarantee connection with each other. And then the third thing that we kind of ended with last week was this, that through disconnecting to connect and through deepening internal values and placing those filters and those perimeters and those practices in place, we're actually developing external boundaries. That we're not letting technology bleed into our lives as much as our lives are interfacing appropriately with technology. Because if it becomes diluted and if the lines are blurred, we become a swamp of relationships. We have no definition. And we become like that swamp that destroys and eats everything up in its path. And the other option is that we could become a river if we place these boundaries in our lives, and if they're appropriate, and if they're guarded, and if they're specific, then we can give life to people rather than give death to people. So that's where we were last week. And today, what we want to try to look at is we want to celebrate just a couple of families that have taken that challenge seriously. This last week, Amy Dickey, where you at, Amy? Are you in here? She might not be here this week, but Amy and Dan Dickey got home. They opened their envelope that we distributed, and she put it on her Facebook. She's the top left picture on the screen. She put the sticker that was in the packet. She was one of the 10, and she put it right on her phone. Put it on her Facebook wall. We're going to give her a mug today. There's still 9 of those stickers left in the packets. So that means that there's still options out there for you guys to win a coffee mug, but that's not the reason that we're doing that. That's just a gimmick, right? But others of you posted and you reposted and you emailed and you said, hey, this really meets where we're at as a family. I just want to say thanks. And you were sharing that weird conversation that happened this week with Southeast Polk families and parents in the junior high school. Some technology is not being used in an appropriate way for teenagers. And the entire community of Southeast Polk families are going, what's going on? You know why? Because 10 years ago, I think it was Sherry Turkle who said, you wait and you watch, and by 2019, every student in the public system will have their own personal Chromebook. And that's how we're going to do technology. If you're not aware of this, that's where we're at today. As the kids were registering for classes, every one of my children received a laptop that was given to them and issued to them by the school. So now technology is everywhere. Your kids have it, we have it, it's in our pocket, it lives with us. It never turns off. And we have to find ways to turn off. But through that interfacing, some young man was inappropriate with how he was communicating with people. And so it gave us an opportunity to leverage and to talk to a community who's around us wondering, what do we do now? Hey, there's some cool resources out here. Let me share some with you. That's what this is all about. And I'm so excited that this church is right on the edge of some of those conversations. We're out front, setting the pace, raising the bar. But this series is not about technology. It's about connection. It's about how to stay connected with God. How to stay connected with each other despite all the technological advancements. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 24 says, one who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend. Solomon writes this, think about this. But there is a friend who sticks closer to you than a brother. Even though the definition of friendship has become diluted in our world, the desire has not. We all desire close friendship. How do we get there? How do we get there? See, Jesus himself was called a friend to sinners. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 19, it says, Jesus even says this to the crowd that he was with. He says, the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and now everyone says about that Son of Man that here is a glutton, here is a drunkard, he is a friend of sinners and tax collectors. But wisdom is proved right by her deeds. Jesus was described as a friend of us, as a friend of people, as a friend of sinners. In the Old Testament, there were only 2 people who were ever called or described as a friend of God. The first one was Abraham, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But Exodus chapter 33, Moses is also described as a friend of God. It says that, and Moses spoke to God like a friend would face to face. Friendship is natural. Friendship is normal. Friendship is desired. And John gives us a little context for a new definition that he's going to bring to the men that he's been spending time with. Over the last 3 years, Jesus has been grooming these guys. We know them as disciples. We know them as followers. And at this time, he has spread the Passover meal out in front of them. He has just shared with them some tragic news that one of them will betray him. And he tells that one guy that he dipped bread with to go do what he's going to do quickly. And there's only 11 remaining at the table, and they're wondering what Jesus just talked about, what just happened, what's going on. And it would be the very last supper that he would celebrate with these men, the very last time that he would be able to share in an intimate setting. And something radical happens. Jesus changes the definition and even the overall interaction of their relationship with one word. He says, "You're my friend." It's the first time they would have heard that. Jesus gives us a biblical definition of friendship. And that's what we're going to look at today. So I've asked you to turn to John 15. I hope that you have. We're going to be living in verse 9 through verse 17. So let's dive in. And the key thought for this entire phrase is this: that God is the one who initiates relationship. God is the one who has initiated relationship with all of us. He's initiated relationship with these disciples, and it's a template and it's a format for all of us to follow in how we interact with one another. So verse 9, Jesus says, "As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love." The section before this, Jesus had just got through telling the disciples, "You are the branch, and I am the vine. You stay connected with me, and you'll bear much fruit." That's the only way this works. We are desperate. We are in desperate need of God. We are in desperate need of His relationship. We're in desperate need of Him. And it doesn't matter if you came from a very comfortable place or a very chaotic place this week, or even just a curious platform. You know instinctively that there's something out there, that there's something more. And that something more is a deep relationship with God. The only real way to have any fruit in your life or any life in your life is to stay connected. And he's reminding them of that at the end of verse 9. So remain in my love. Stay there, dwell there, don't move from there. This is where life happens. Verse 10, "If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love." He's saying this is how you will remain in my love. You remain in my love with your obedience. Just like I obeyed the Father's command, and I remain in His love, I have told you this, that my joy might be complete in you, and that your joy might be complete also. Verse 12, "My command is this: love each other. Just like I've loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know his master's business." And this is where the bombshell gets dropped. This is where radically they're challenged with their relationship. He says, "Instead, I have called you my friends. For everything that I've learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. Then the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. This is my command: love one another." Jesus clarifies biblical friendship for us, and there's a couple of things for us to really take home this week, for us to bring in direct application with our lives and in our relationships with one another. The first thing I'd like you to understand, and I'd like you to start to think about how to apply in your own life, is this: that following always comes first before friendship. Following comes before friendship. Now, as you're processing and as you're wrestling that in your mind, let me try to share with you why I believe that's true. I think it's important for us not to reverse the order in verse 14. Verse 14, Jesus says this: "You are my friend if you do what I command." You see it? That's what it says. You are my friend if you do what I command. This is not, because I called you my friend, you will do what I say. the friendship doesn't come first. Following comes first. These men have followed Jesus for 3.5 years. They've understood the appropriate relationship with Jesus. He has been their mentor. He has been their guide. He has been their director. He has been their scout. And over the last 3 years, they have learned practices. They have adopted principles. They've understood how to interact with one another and the world that they live in. And through that time, undoubtedly, they would have started, the walls of their personalities and of their friendships and relationship would have deteriorated slowly. It's not natural for you to be friends with someone immediately. That's not how this works. That's not how life is intended. Because there's a dance to relationships. There's an ebb and a flow. There's a trust and maybe even a hurt that happens. Some of my deepest friendships are over time, and through that time, it's like a root system going deep and deep and deeper into the ground. And you start to kind of trust somebody with a little bit of information, and as you get to know that individual, they start to be a little bit more expressive in their nature. You start to understand each other's language, but following comes before friendship. See, if it is, you follow me first, you follow me first and friendship second. Our relationship with Christ is very progressive. It's like a parental relationship. It's not a pushover relationship. Jesus doesn't come up to you and say, hey, we're buddies. Hey, buddy, old pal, let's go. Let's do this thing together. Because you don't know him yet. You haven't understood how he speaks. You don't know how he walks. You don't know what he expects. And he knows you intimately, but you don't know him intimately. And until you've had time to really follow Jesus, there's not friendship yet. Friendship happens after time. It's just natural in all of our relationships. So the more interactions that you have with one another, and as time continues to build into your lives, in the context of your relationship, eventually friendship can take place. But it is not automatic. Friendship is conditional. Love is eternal. Don't confuse those two. You can love somebody and not be a friend to someone. But you're not always a friend with everyone that you love. But you can love everyone that you encounter. Love is eternal. Friendship is conditional. And here's why this is. I want you to picture your friend just for a second. Let me try to continue to dissect this a little bit more. Picture your friend. Maybe it's your bridesmaids or your best men or your groomsmen. Maybe you don't have that. Maybe you never really had a lot of friends that you were close to. Just pick the one friend in your mind that you're super, super, super close to. Like they're your brother, they're your sister. Okay? I want you to get their face in your noggin. I want them to be here. Now I want you to imagine a crisis in your life. Maybe it's a death in a family. Maybe it's an accident that happened. Maybe you're going through a real painful time. Maybe a real painful season. Some crisis happens. And you decide to have enough courage to call, or maybe you don't even have to call. They see you, they interact with you, and they can hear on the phone call the tone in your voice. They can see your countenance as they interact with you face to face, and they know something's up. What's their automatic response? See, their automatic response is that they're going to surrender their time for this season for you. They will stand with you in this difficult time. They will lay down all of their conveniences. They will do everything possible. They will give you every resource at their disposal. They'll clear their calendar. They'll clear their schedule. They're saying, I'm all in, and it's a voluntary surrender to you. That's slavery. That's servanthood. That's when you know someone is a true friend. Anybody can be an associate. Anyone you can have a connection with. But to have a real friend that sticks closer to you than a brother, that requires time. That requires sacrifice. That requires surrender. And this relationship that Jesus is describing with the disciples, with the men around the table, He's telling them this is an organic conclusion to the official call that I started with you. This is something that's just going to take place over time. I need to jump on a soapbox just for a second. Parents, I need you to stay with me. Moms and dads, we are in a weird place in our world where parents believe they're called to be their friends to their children. That is not your role. You are not called to be your son or daughter's friend. You are called to be their mom and their dad. You are called to set boundaries. You are called to discipline. You are called to love. You are called to coach. They are called to follow your lead. That's the appropriate relationship here. And as that happens, and as they learn to follow in dad's steps or in mom's steps, eventually over time, you know what happens to that relationship? You no longer call them servants. You no longer call them kids. You do get to call them friends, but you cannot fast track that process. They are not your friends when they are young. They are your children. And as they have exemplified that you can trust them over time, that they will follow you even through difficult times, and you'll be able to celebrate at the peaks, and you'll be able to be concerned with them in their valleys. As that happens, eventually you'll be friends. That's not wrong. But as you are their mom and dad for a short season, they are not your friend. That's not popular. Many of us don't want to interact with our kids that way. We want to just fix it and fix it now, put them in the microwave, push one, and then have them come out produced. That's not how this works. You are their mom and dad. They need you to be mother and father. They need to see what it's like to be husband and wife. And it's progressive. This week I was speaking to a family, and the mom shared with me a story that happened around their living room. It was kind of fun just to interact and celebrate with this family a little bit. And she said her children were doing some homework around the table. And one of the children said, "This is hard. I don't want to do this. You're mean." Something like that. And her response was gold. And she said, "Then I'm doing my job." I was like, you go, girl. Man, we need more of those people. We need more of those moms and dads who understand that their role is different. It's not to be buddy-buddy. You can be advocate. You can love. It's not called to be friends at this point. Second definition that Christ gives us as friendship is this. When it's done right, you need to understand that friendship will hurt. And sometimes it'll hurt like hell, but it'll hurt. It's painful to be a friend to somebody. Man, it's painful. It would be better, in some ways, we think it would be better to not be friends with anyone because of the pain that we've been in. And so we start to isolate ourselves and we start to insulate ourselves. I want you to look at verse 12 here. Jesus says in verse 12, "My command is this, love each other." And you know what we do there? We put a period there. Okay, yeah, I'm going to love each other. All right, automatic, yeah, I'll love each other. You know what he says at the end of that? I think this is the genius of Christ, more than just, of course he's Lord, of course he's God, and all, of course he's deity, but just the sheer genius that he didn't stop, because he says, "Like I loved you." See, it's easy for us to say, yeah, I'm going to love you, but it's hard for us, a completely different side conversation, to understand how to love them. How do we love like Jesus loved? Well, you start to understand what Jesus did. He was the model of our motivation. His model is our motivation. He loves others before he loved himself. He identified the needs of others, and he set aside his own personal needs. Many times it says that he would go out, he would look for a place where he could be isolated, where he could go to solitude, and yet the crowd pressed in, and he set aside his own desire that he served them first. So if we identify the needs of others, we serve the needs of others before we serve ourselves. He laid down his own life. He was crucified. He was given the most brutal death known to man. He laid down his life even when he didn't deserve it. There are times that you will make a choice, and it's not the rational choice to make for friends. It doesn't make sense. Why would you drive 5 hours and spend a full day and take PTO to go spend time with your friend? That's not rational. They would understand if you didn't go to that funeral. Nah. See, if true friend stands by you, no matter how rational it is. So we love through the pain, and that love is called unconditional. You see, true love is not some note from a boy. It's not some kiss from a prince. True love is sacrificial love. It will hurt, which means at times you'll have to confront your friend. At times you'll have to redefine the relationship. There might be a moment where you can't walk with your friend in a specific way, and at times you confront them face to face, toe to toe, and you say, what you're doing, brother, what you're doing, sister, is not right. They need your counsel. They need your advice. See, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but enemies, they'll multiply their kisses. That old proverb, what it's talking about is that you'll flatter people that you don't care for. The people that you care for, you'll confront. You'll confront with truth. And that's what the beauty of the church is all about. That's why when we do membership, we talk about how are you saying that you want the elders to come with a 2x4 and hit you with a big love stick if you start walking inconsistent with what we see in Scripture? That's why we ask that question. Because love hurts. It's not fun. It's not some ticket at an amusement park. It's painful. And you weep at night for your friends. You mourn when they mourn. You walk in very dark places and dark valleys. That's what friendship is. And Jesus modeled friendship. He modeled true love by doing something he didn't deserve. We deserved the punishment that he took. God demonstrates his own love in this, Romans 5:8, that while we were still sinners, while we were his enemies, we weren't even friends at this point, he laid down his life. Greater love has no one than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. What kind of radical love lays down their life for enemies? We're just talking about friendship right now at this point. If you want to know if someone's a true friend, they'll hurt when you hurt. They'll sacrifice when you need it the most. If you want to know when you're a friend, are you sacrificing at the expense of others? You see, I think what we do is, if God initiates relationship with us, and we all kind of instinctively know that, what we have a propensity to do is to insulate ourselves from each other. We don't initiate. And that's the real challenge in friendship, is that instead of insulating ourselves from the ugly world that's out there and from the pain that we're around, we go after it. We initiate difficulty. We initiate and risk getting hurt. We put our heart out of our chest and we give it to him in our palms and we say, I trust you with this. Don't hurt me, brother. I know it might sting. Don't hurt me, brother. And we expect that it will hurt. That's friendship. It's not convenient. The third principle I think Christ gives us with friendship is this. Friends are kept in the loop. They're kept in the loop. They understand the plan. They know that they're in on the mission. Look at verse 15. He says, I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I've learned from my Father, I have made known to you. Jesus was at full disclosure. You see, the friends in your life are the ones that are on the ground floor of what you're dealing with, and they're also helping you build the ceiling of that issue that you're facing right now. They're the ones who are concerned with the plan, and they celebrate the victory. They're the ones who dream with you and dream big with you, and they worry about the details with you. They're big picture and small picture altogether. But a servant, they are just tasks. They're just people who do things for you. A true friend is in on the mission. They understand the big picture. You know, we talk a lot at Rising Sun about being a church that is growing in God's greatest commands and commission. And in this passage, Jesus said, you're my friends if you do what I say. You're my friends if you follow my commandments. And those commandments are that we would love one another just like He loved us. We talk about how to grow, or that we're not stagnant, we're not static, we're not content. We want to continuously be better tomorrow than we are today. We want to be more like Jesus tomorrow than we are today. How are you doing it? Loving the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind and all of your strength. How are you doing in that department? Are you constantly connected to the vine? How are you doing in growing in your love for each other? How are you doing it growing in connection with each other? How are you doing with the Great Commission? To go into the rest of the world and tell everybody as loudly and as boldly and as creatively and as quickly and as effectively as you can. You know what we do instead? We're pretty selective about our commission, aren't we? We decide who and when and where and how we communicate the love of God. We can't be selective. We've been called to be effective. Friends are at the table. They're in the mission center. They're in the war room. They're praying with you. They're kneeling with you. Friends know that Jesus is taking His message to the world, the message of hope, the message of crucifixion, the message of resurrection, to the ends of the earth. The plan is to carry that message as far and as loud and as fast as humanly possible, and He's invited every one of us to be a part of that mission so that every nation and every tongue and every tribe would know who He is. That's why here at Rising Sun, we're a missional church. We're not just a missional church. We're a church on mission. We have purpose. We have reason. We have a work to do. You have a work to do. You have a purpose. You have a reason. You have a mission. And that mission is to make Him famous. You're either using technology to help advance that goal, to get to that end, or technology is competing against that goal. Technology is either making you famous, or it's making Him. Technology can redefine your relationships, or your relationships can redefine technology. And the whole goal of this entire series was that you would learn how to stay connected, that you would learn how to stay connected to that vine, that you would learn how to stay connected with each other. That's how we use technology. What's the purpose of technology? To build His name. What's the purpose of anything in life? To build His name. What's the purpose of your life? To build His name. What's your identity? To build His name. This week, we're going to push pause on what we're doing on Wednesday nights. We're very serious about this conversation because we see how specific and how related it is to our time today. So we've provided a recipe card for everyone in the church. On Wednesday nights, we're not having Wednesday night activities. There's no men's class, no women's class, no children's class, nothing going on with the youth. We're asking you to get together with your tribe. Your tribe is your people. It's your family. It's your small group. It's those that you go to work with. It's the people that you're connected with. We're asking you to call your tribe together on Wednesday night and to go get a movie. It talks about technology. I know it's a little ironic, but it seems to fit. It seems to be good. And that movie is known as Wall-E. And Wall-E is a fun movie about what happens in a world when technology becomes everything. So we want you to get together with your tribe, and after you've watched the movie, we want you to take this envelope and open it up and use it as a discussion guide for your tribe. There's instructions on the back of this. It's all in the purpose to try to stay connected with each other. God has a very specific reason for you. And the things in this world can distract us from that purpose. Father, I pray right now that you would just speak to us, that you would help us to be a people who belong to you, a holy nation. Lord, I pray that as we go out and as we proclaim your name, that you would give us confidence and courage and wisdom and humility, all combined together in an elegant way to reflect you. In Christ's name, amen.